So, picture this. I'm at this insanely fancy restaurant, right? Everything's perfect. The kind of place where the air smells expensive and even the silence feels rich. I'm there to celebrate a huge personal win. And then, bam, my sister's boyfriend, some guy I've barely met, calls me a freeloader at my own party. Can you believe that? Well, I didn't react the way he expected. Instead, I let him think he was winning, and that's when the real story begins. You won't see this coming. The restaurant was something out of a dream l'orangerie, they called it, and stepping inside felt like walking into another world. The air was rich, buttery, almost intoxicating, carrying the faint scent of polished wood, delicate pastries, and something you could only describe as old money elegance. The ceilings were gilded, the crystal glasses so thin they seemed to hum in your hands, and the silence wasn't empty, it was heavy, plush, broken only by murmurs of soft conversation and the distant, mournful notes of a cello somewhere far off. My private dining room, tucked away like a secret alcove, overlooked the moonlight garden, offering the perfect mix of luxury and privacy. It was more than a meal, it was a stage for 15 years of effort, late nights, and grinding toward the career milestone I'd just achieved. Tonight was meant to celebrate that the culmination of a journey of discipline, hard work, and sacrifice. The guests were carefully chosen, each a thread in the tapestry of my life. My sister, Chloe, was there, bright-eyed and anxious, hoping to be impressed, but also visibly nervous. Julian, my oldest friend, was a pillar of steady intellect, his sharp suits and sharper mind a silent reassurance. Chloe had insisted on bringing two of her friends, Alfie, a crypto investor, stoic and unreadable, barely blinking as if calculating every number in the universe, and Rachel, a lifestyle blogger, already snapping photos of bread plates like they were works of art, more invested in the spectacle than the people. And then there was Marcus, my sister's boyfriend, her plus one, and someone I was meeting for the first time that night. Marcus made an impression immediately. Not a good one. Everything about him screamed artificial confidence. His teeth were unnaturally white, his tan suspiciously orange, and his cologne wasn't subtle, it was invasive, like it claimed the room before he even entered. He wore a suit that tried too hard to look custom, but the pull at the shoulders betrayed it as rented, expensive, but ultimately temporary, and he was loud. Too loud. Every word he spoke seemed calculated to assert dominant synergy, disruption, funding rounds, IPO plans. Chloe had raved about him beforehand, breathless over the phone, a fintech entrepreneur, a genius, soon to be jetting off to Dubai. But the way he carried himself in person made it clear show, not substance. His laughter was brazen, gestures exaggerated, every glance around the room demanding attention. It was all performance. And you could practically see the ego floating above him like a balloon. I stepped away for a moment to consult with the maitre d' about the champagne, quietly upgrading my pre-ordered bottle to something exceptional. When I returned, the cello had begun a new sonata, the room bathed in golden light, and there he was, Marcus, slouched into my seat, one arm draped over the back, a smug grin claiming the head of the table. Chloe went pale. Julian's amusement gave way to cold calculation. Alfie and Rachel giggled nervously, unsure whether to support him or not. And Chloe frozen, eyes wide, caught between admiration for him and her loyalty to me. I didn't feel anger. I didn't panic. I felt a click, that quiet, satisfying mental click you get just before a complex puzzle resolves itself. Marcus thought he was establishing dominance, claiming the room, the people, the night itself. He had no idea he was stepping into a world he couldn't possibly comprehend. The restaurant, the cello, the air thick with expensive silence. It was all part of the stage, and I was watching, calm, observing every detail, the fake confidence, the rented suit, the invasive cologne, the way he tried to command attention. Every laugh, every gesture, every little smirk mattered. It was the perfect setup for what was about to unfold, and I had the front row seat. I walked back into the private dining room, ready to raise a toast, and froze. There he was, Marcus, lounging in my seat at the head of the table, one arm casually draped over the back, a grin that was way too self-satisfied plastered across his face. He picked up my folded napkin and tossed it onto the empty plate beside him. And then he looked right at me and said, loud enough for nearby tables to catch it, "This seat's not for freeloaders. Freeloaders, my own party, my night." And here he was, thinking he could command the room by taking my seat and throwing out some cheap insult. The world snapped into this sharp, surreal focus. The cello, the buttery air, the clink of crystal, it all seemed to vanish. Julian's face, which had been amusement tinged with curiosity, hardened. He actually started to rise from his chair. That subtle tension of someone ready to act, Alfie and Rachel, caught somewhere between discomfort and fascination, giggled nervously, unsure how to react but leaning toward the person who seemed in charge. Chloe, she just froze, wide-eyed, her face drained of color, torn between awe and loyalty. Marcus laughed, a short, almost barking sound. "Oh, Elizabeth, I was wondering where you went," he said, his tone dripping with smugness, the kind that made your skin crawl. And then he leaned back, a predator in rented fabric, utterly convinced of his own dominance. I could see the fake watch glinting on his wrist, the suit trying desperately to read his custom, and his cologne invading my space. He thought he was clever, establishing power over me in my own celebration. But here's the thing, he had no idea who he was dealing with. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel the need to shout or shove him out of the chair. I felt something far colder, far more satisfying, the click of understanding, like a lock tumbling into place. This was just a game, and I was already reading the board. Marcus had called me a freeloader, but in my world, that wasn't an insult. It was a green light. It was an invitation to respond, to act, to let him dig his own hole. The betrayal wasn't the insult itself. It was Chloe's frozen silence. The way her trust and admiration for him had already started to cloud her judgment. The insult was just the tool I needed. I let the silence stretch. Thick, heavy, deliciously uncomfortable. Marcus's smirk widened. Convinced he had won, he thought my nod, my small, deliberate tilt of the chin, was submission. He had no clue that this was exactly the reaction I wanted. The calm before the storm, the quiet moment where the stage was perfectly set. He was a man puffed up with ego, and I was about to let that ego do all the work for me. He thought he had the upper hand. He had no idea he'd already stepped into my audit. Chloe's eyes flicked between Marcus and me, trapped, unsure. Her expression a mix of fear and admiration. Julian, ever the calm professional, was already reading the tension in the room. He wasn't smiling anymore. His amusement had evaporated, replaced by that focused, precise look of someone who knew things were about to get interesting. Alfie and Rachel continued their uncertain giggles, still unsure, still scanning the dynamics, probably figuring out which side to fall on. The rest of the guests, subtle and quiet, were waiting, sensing the shift, catching the current of unease without understanding its depth. I studied Marcus. Every detail mattered. The rented suit, the fake watch, the overly aggressive cologne, the way he tried to dominate the room by volume alone. He believed he was clever, establishing dominance over the older, supposedly boring sister. He thought he was the wolf and I was the sheep. But that's the thing, he had no idea that in my world, the numbers never lie. The people never lie either. And I had been observing him from the moment he walked in, cataloging every gesture, every boast, every weak point. It was like reading an open ledger, and everything was telling me exactly who he was, exactly what he had done, and exactly what he thought he could get away with. I didn't move. I didn't react with words. I just nodded slightly. A single, deliberate gesture. That small tilt of my chin was enough to say, I see you, I'm watching, and I'm not impressed. I could feel Julian's gaze, steady and assessing, adding a layer of quiet authority. Marcus had the wrong audience for his performance tonight. He was loud, but loud in the wrong room. Boastful, but for people who could see through the bluster, he had chosen poorly. The room was quiet, everyone waiting for the next move. Chloe, frozen and wide-eyed, gave no signal. No interruption, just a look that said she was torn between loyalty and fascination. Alfie and Rachel were still unsure, the tension keeping them in a hesitant balance, their laughter occasional and nervous. Julian's fingers rested lightly on the table, a subtle readiness, like a chess player preparing for the next move. And Marcus, oblivious to the web tightening around him, leaned back further, smirk in place, completely confident in his perceived victory. I allowed myself a moment, just a fraction of a second, to absorb it all. The cello's mournful notes, the soft hum of the crystal glasses, the rich, buttery scent, and the silent anticipation of the private dining room. Everything was a stage, and he was performing the role I had already written for him. I didn't need to speak, didn't need to confront him yet. The room itself, the reactions of the guests, the subtle shift in energy, they were all pieces of the puzzle. And me, I was quietly calculating, observing, preparing, letting the tension build until the perfect moment for action arrived. This was the beginning. Not of the fight, not yet, but the setup. Marcus had given me exactly what I needed: a clear miscalculation, an ego inflated beyond reason, and a public claim over my space, my celebration, my night. He thought he was winning, and here I was, calm, steady, watching, letting the pieces align. The audience, the guests were all witnesses in this silent, tense prelude. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that the game had just started. I stepped out of the private dining room, heels silent on the plush carpet, and made my way to the lounge. It was just as luxurious, but more intimate dark wood, velvet chairs, a single pianist playing a soft, elegant prelude that seemed to wrap around you. From here, I had a perfect view of the private room without being in it. I could see Marcus clearly, holding court, draping himself over Chloe's chair, laughing like the king of his little empire. And I could see everything else too, the subtle reactions of the guests, Julian's sharp gaze, even the small, nervous movements of Alfie and Rachel. I settled into a small table that gave me complete visibility. From here, I could watch without being watched. And in that moment, the room transformed from a party into a live case study. As a forensic accountant, my brain doesn't work like most people's. While everyone else was sipping champagne or murmuring polite conversation, I was reading the people and the numbers the way most people read a story. Every gesture, every glance, every boast is data. And Marcus, he was full of it. He wasn't just obnoxious, he was a predator, circling Chloe with that effortless charm, thinking he could manipulate and impress without consequence. But I see patterns. I see the inconsistencies. I see the lies hiding in the details. My mind immediately started piecing it together. That expensive watch he flashed replica, his fancy Maserati he drove up in leased, high interest, likely 3 months behind, his fintech company dissolved months ago for failing to pay a $300 agent fee, the IPO, the Dubai trips, The grand promises, they were all smoke and mirrors. And the thing about predators is they leave breadcrumbs. I knew what to look for: inflated stories, flimsy assets, gaps in timelines. Within minutes, I was cataloging everything he had shown us, everything he had bragged about, and starting to connect it all to reality. The numbers never lie, and the numbers were screaming his story. I pulled my clutch closer, slid my phone from it, and opened my laptop discreetly on the table. There would be no hasty moves, no rushed reactions. This wasn't about immediate confrontation. It was about strategy. I wasn't just going to expose him, I was going to make him experience the consequences in real time. He had humiliated me, taken my seat, called me a freeloader. That was a tactical error on his part, and I intended to make it a devastating one. I started by setting up the audit, laying out what would be needed to prove his fraud in a way he couldn't deny. And here's where the fun part began. I ordered my meal, not just any meal, the most expensive, indulgent, over-the-top dishes I could find. Imperial Ostra caviar, the large selection, one spoonful at a time just to savor it. The rare 1990 shade Alpatras wine, the bottle, not the glass. The A5 Wagyu Kobe, 8 ounces, paired with truffle-infused potato puree and cream spinach with roasted garlic. And of course, a 50-year-old Louis XII cognac. Because if you're going to make a point, make it memorable. The total, just shy of $3,800, all under his name. I watched the waiter's eyes flick between the bill, the crisp $100 bill I slid across the tray, and me. He understood. It was a quiet transaction, but there was a subtle acknowledgement this was no ordinary guest. I wasn't just ordering food. I was crafting evidence, building a case, turning the indulgence into a meticulous, painful demonstration of his overreach. He thought he was in control, holding the party, impressing everyone, maintaining the illusion of dominance. Little did he know, I was the one orchestrating the real power play. I leaned back slightly in the velvet chair, taking in the lounge. The soft piano notes were a perfect counterpoint to the tension in the private room. I could see Marcus laughing, loudly, trying to command attention, draping his rented suit over the chair, oblivious to the narrative unfolding. Chloe sat mesmerized, Alfie and Rachel unsure, Julian sharp, calculating. I was perfectly positioned to observe every subtle move, every overstep, every tiny crack in his performance. And I was ready. I reflected on the years of preparation that had led me here. The quiet nights poring over ledgers, the meticulous dedication, the discipline, the armor I had built piece by piece. Every skill, every habit, every instinct that made me the youngest partner in my firm's history was coming into play. Marcus had misread the room, misread me, misread Chloe. And in that misreading lay the opening I needed. From my vantage point, every laugh he gave, every boast he made, every flash of arrogance was cataloged, analyzed, stored for the perfect moment of revelation. As I sipped my cognac, tasting its velvet warmth, I started thinking several steps ahead. How would he react when the charges hit? How would the room respond when the truth became impossible to ignore? The meal was only the first part of the plan. I wasn't just making him pay, it was about making the story undeniable. Marcus thought he was performing, but he was on my stage now, and I held the script. Every detail of his life, every misstep, every false claim, every weak point was accounted for. I wasn't going to expose him in private, I was going to do it publicly, where every witness could see and he could not deflect. The lounge became a cockpit, and I was the pilot. I observed, planned, anticipated. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I was calm, steady, collecting the pieces, preparing the audit, letting the tension build to the moment where it would snap. Every sip of wine, every bite of caviar, every note from the piano, every glance at the private room was a data point, a signal, a confirmation that the plan was in motion. Marcus had no idea. He was performing, oblivious, and that was exactly how it needed to be. I leaned back in the lounge chair, calm as ever, and signaled the waiter. "Madame," he asked, and I gave him the slightest nod, enough to convey authority without being flashy. I opened the menu, though I'd already decided this wasn't about choice, it was about precision, about sending a message without a single word spoken aloud. I started with the Imperial Ostra Caviar, the largest selection on the menu, each spoonful priced at $450. The waiter barely blinked, as though he'd seen this kind of order before, but I could tell he felt the weight of it. Next, the wine. Not a casual glass, not even a bottle for the table. The 1990 shade Alpatras, a reserve meant for collectors with bottomless pockets, was what I ordered. $2,200 for a bottle that carried history and prestige in every drop. He wouldn't question it. Not now, not ever. Marcus was blissfully unaware, laughing and boasting in the private room, draping himself over Chloe's chair, the picture of a man convinced he ruled the night. His ego was loud, invasive, but in the wrong hands, the wrong room, at the wrong table. Every gesture, every self-assured laugh, every attempt to impress was feeding into the trap I had meticulously set. Then the main course, a 5 Wagyu Kobe, 8 ounces, accompanied by truffle-infused potato puree and cream spinach roasted with garlic. The total for that dish, $350. Perfectly decadent, perfectly excessive, and perfectly aligned with the plan. And finally, the pièce de résistance, the 50-year-old Louis XII cognac. I asked for it to be poured and enjoyed now. $600 for a single glass. By the time the order was complete, my little tally ran nearly $3,800. Every item was carefully chosen, every number calculated to precision. It wasn't just indulgence, it was strategy. A silent strike that Marcus couldn't even perceive. I handed the waiter a crisp, folded $100 bill, the smallest spark to start the flame, a gesture that said, "Humor me, trust me." He took it, eyes flicking briefly to me, then to the menu, and nodded. As he moved off to place the order, I let myself relax for a fraction of a second, just long enough to savor the setup. Marcus thought he was running the show. He believed that by claiming my seat, asserting dominance, and throwing around his fintech lingo, he controlled the night. He had no clue. Not yet. The entire room, from the private alcove to my vantage in the lounge, was my stage, and he was the unwitting performer in a play he didn't even understand. I watched him through the open archways that separated the lounge from the dining room. He was the picture of self-importance, leaning back, laughing too loudly, talking over everyone, pretending to charm the room. Chloe was still watching him with awe, her eyes soft, her admiration unfiltered. Alfie and Rachel, caught between nervous amusement and fascination, sipped at their drinks, unsure which way to align. Julian, ever the observer, tilted his head slightly, scanning, noting, the perfect witness to what was about to unfold. And I just sat, calm and deliberate, savoring the small, calculated thrill of the situation. Every note of laughter, every gesture of arrogance from Marcus was a data point, a confirmation that the trap was working exactly as intended. He thought he was the star, but he was building his own evidence with every boast, every flash of fake confidence, every empty claim. The numbers would tell the story, but it was his ego that was writing the narrative for me. The waiter returned first with the caviar, a silver bowl set over ice, the ceremony almost comically elaborate. I took a spoonful, letting the creamy, salty richness coat my palate. It was perfect, decadent, and most importantly, on his tab. Marcus, meanwhile, continued to dominate conversation in the private room, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing just a few steps away. Each bite, each sip of wine, each indulgent taste of the Wagyu Kobe was another stitch in the tapestry of his downfall. I watched him reach for his glass, gesture expansively, pat Chloe's hand, completely absorbed in the performance he thought he controlled. The grand irony was delicious. He was so busy playing the impresario that he didn't see the ledger forming behind the scenes. The rare wine, the luxurious beef, the caviar, the cognac, they were all quietly being logged, silently auditing his character, his finances, his overconfidence. Each dollar charged was a reflection of his hubris, an invisible line connecting his lies to their consequences. He had no idea that by trying to impress everyone, by showing off, he was setting himself up for an unavoidable reckoning. I lifted the cognac glass, swirling it, inhaling the aged warmth, and let myself feel the satisfaction. Not a rush of gloating, but a calm, steady acknowledgement that the pieces were in place. The orchestra of the private room, the laughter, the gestures, the ego was providing the perfect soundtrack. Marcus was unraveling in slow motion, each moment of overconfidence depositing another layer of proof on the ledger I was building from afar. Every observer mattered too. Chloe, wrapped up in her infatuation, hadn't noticed the plan forming, and I let her admiration remain untouched until it was time. Alfie and Rachel were processing the social dynamics, oblivious to the calculated audit happening behind the scenes. Julian, precise and attentive, served as the anchor, the steady witness who could corroborate the story when the time came. And Marcus. He was the unwitting protagonist in his own financial audit, digging deeper with every gesture, every laugh, every boast, the total sum of indulgence. $3,800 was more than a number. It was poetry, a meticulously crafted, silent coup conducted with elegance, precision, and patience. I allowed the moments to stretch, savoring each note from the piano, each shimmer from the crystal, each subtle movement in the private room. The meal arrived, the plates and glasses arranged with quiet ceremony, and I took it all in. Each bite was a taste of strategy, every sip a measure of impending justice, and every glance toward Marcus a confirmation that the first phase of the trap was unfolding flawlessly. The night was his stage, but I was the playwright, and he didn't even know the script had changed. I settled deeper into the velvet chair in the lounge, laptop open on my knees, fingers poised over the keyboard. The glow of the screen was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it illuminated the quiet intensity in my eyes. Across the open archways, Marcus was holding court, completely absorbed in his own performance, oblivious to the quiet storm building just a few feet away. Chloe sat by his side, eyes wide with admiration, unaware of the slow, meticulous unraveling about to begin. Julian, the perfect witness, leaned slightly forward, hands folded, eyes scanning both Marcus and the room, a calm observer ready to step in at the precise moment. I started pulling up the files I had meticulously prepared over the past few weeks. Dissolution papers from Delaware for Marcus Ventures, LLC, wire fraud complaints filed in Ohio by former partners, a public filing for a $1,200 debt from a dry cleaner in Queens. Every document was carefully cross-checked, every detail verified, every number a nail in the coffin of his facade. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to confront him directly. This was about evidence, timing, and precision. Marcus had exposed himself with his own arrogance. I just had to hand the proof to the right person at the right moment. I typed Julian's address into the email field, subject line, simple, Marcus body. I attached every document, every file, every shred of evidence. This wasn't just about catching him, it was about creating a narrative so undeniable that even his bluster couldn't cover it. Fingers hovering, I took a steadying breath and hit send. In that instant, the quiet ping of the sent message felt like a trigger being pulled. Across the room, I could see Julian's phone light up, his eyes flicking to the screen. The expression didn't change, not outwardly. But there was a subtle shift, the almost imperceptible tightening of his jaw, the sharpening of his gaze. He read, he understood, and he was ready. Marcus, oblivious, continued his performance, leaning back, gesturing wildly, regaling the table with tales of IPOs, disruptive technology, and financial genius. Each boast, each puff of self-importance, each careless brag was another thread I'd woven into the web. I watched as Julian, calm and deliberate, began to weave subtle interventions. A question here, a leading comment there, a fintech IPO. Marcus, that's impressive. The regulatory hurdles must be immense. How are you navigating the SEC, Marcus? Never suspecting a trap. Puffed up even further, words spilling out in a torrent of overconfidence. The SEC, a bunch of dinosaurs, they don't get disruption. Man, they don't get me, he said, slapping the table for emphasis, voice loud enough to carry over polite conversation. I took a slow sip of the cognac, watching the scene unfold. Julian continued, a quiet predator, threading questions with precision. The SEC, that's serious. What's the core of your technology? Marcus leaned in, blustering, showing off the technical jargon he hoped would impress. Blockchain, AI algorithms, both? Exactly. It's revolutionary. It's predictive. It's gonna change everything. I almost smiled, not out of satisfaction, but because the pieces were falling into place exactly as expected. The stage was set, Julian had the evidence, the questions were asked, and Marcus was unknowingly painting the map for his own exposure. I observed the micro reactions. Chloe's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of confusion and dawning horror passing through her admiration. She could sense something off. The unease Julian's questions were triggering, though she couldn't yet articulate it. Alfie and Rachel shifted in their seats, their nervous amusement fading into cautious attention. And Marcus, he had no idea. The veil was lifting slowly, and he was right at the center of it, still thinking he controlled the narrative. With deliberate calm, I watched Julian pick up his phone, scrolling briefly, his expression unchanged, yet every subtle movement radiated intent. The email I had sent glowed on his screen, evidence neatly packaged, impossible to deny, ready to puncture the illusion Marcus had built. Julian's eyes flicked toward Marcus, and in a few quiet, careful words, he began the confrontation. Marcus, you mentioned your partners. I read something recently, a case in Ohio about a couple of people taken for about $80,000 by a partner in a fintech venture. Would you happen to know Marcus Ventures, LLC? The room shifted. A slight intake of breath from Chloe, the faintest pause from Alfie, a nervous glance from Rachel. Marcus froze, his jaw tightening, a flicker of panic passing through his eyes. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered, voice cracking, trying to maintain control. But it was clear the first cracks were forming. Julian, calm as ever, didn't press. He simply let the evidence speak, letting the weight of truth settle on Marcus's shoulders. I leaned slightly forward in my chair, keeping the laptop close, observing every reaction. Chloe's admiration wavered, her brow furrowing as she processed the discordance between the man she thought she knew and the evidence Julian had presented. Marcus shifted in his seat, hands clenching the table, his breathing shallow, the color draining from his face. His confidence, the foundation of his performance, was crumbling beneath the quiet. methodical pressure of facts. It was mesmerizing, watching a man unravel without a single raised voice from me. The narrative had shifted completely. He was no longer in control. He was a defendant in a trial only we could see unfolding. Julian's voice remained calm, controlled, cutting through the fog of Marcus's ego. I was just reading about a few cases in Ohio. Marcus, wire fraud complaints, some unpaid debts. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that. Would you? Marcus sputtered, frantic now. The veneer of sophistication stripped away by his own missteps and the undeniable evidence. I don't know. This is slander. This is a setup. The tremor in his voice betrayed every lie he had tried to present, and the room responded in quiet, charged anticipation. Chloe finally found her voice, trembling, whispering to Julian, "Why would you say that? That's horrible. Marcus, what is he talking about?" Her awe dissolved into horror, and the mask on Marcus's face faltered for the first time. The full weight of his actions and misrepresentations was visible in that instant. Every boast, every gesture, every false claim he had made, the ledger of his life was open, and Julian had just read it aloud in the language of truth. Marcus, desperate, tried to regain control, waving hands, gesturing wildly, fumbling with his words, but it was too late. The room's dynamics had shifted irreversibly. I sat back, hands steady on the laptop, observing. Julian's calm authority anchored the moment. Chloe's dawning understanding filled the room with a quiet tension, and Marcus's panic spread like a ripple, infecting the confidence he had worn like armor. Every lie had been exposed, every claim contradicted by verifiable facts, and the narrative he had tried to control was now utterly in Julian's hands. The evidence, the precise audit I had built, was doing its work silently but devastatingly. By the time the first audible gasps came from the peripheral guests, the scene was complete. Marcus, the self-proclaimed entrepreneur, the king of his own fantasy, was unraveling in real time. The private room, once a domain of laughter and ego, had transformed into a stage for exposure, orchestrated meticulously from my quiet corner in the lounge. I didn't intervene. I didn't shout. I simply observed, calm, collected, savoring the quiet power of precision, patience, and truth. Every detail had aligned, every reaction had been anticipated, and every lie had been caught in the act. Marcus had built his own cage, and the door had just been locked. Marcus had been riding high, oblivious to the trap. When the moment of reckoning finally arrived, the waiter approached the private table with the consolidated bill, the small black leather folio held with the solemnity of a judge bringing down a verdict. Marcus saw it and stiffened, a flicker of irritation crossing his face, quickly masked by bravado. He snatched it from the waiter, announcing loudly, "I'll handle this. A true entrepreneur always pays his way." The gesture was meant to impress, to reassert control, but he didn't yet know the depth of what he was about to face. He flipped open the folio, eyes scanning the itemized charges. His smile faltered almost immediately. Imperial Ostra Caviar, $450. Shade Alpatras, $1992,200. A 5 Wagyu Kobe, $300. Truffle puree and cream spinach, $75 each. Louis XII cognac, $600. The subtotal alone was staggering, and then came the taxes and automatic gratuity. But the kicker, the thing he hadn't anticipated, was the separate lounge charges the meal I had ordered under his name. The total had ballooned past $7,000. His confident posture, his carefully maintained composure, began to crumble. He blinked, frozen for a split second, then tried to maintain control. "Wait, what? This isn't right. There must be a mistake." He stammered, voice rising slightly. The waiter remained composed, professional, unwavering. Sir, that is the combined total, including the lounge order. Madame approved it, he said quietly, almost reverently, as if he sensed he was witnessing a rare kind of public downfall. Marcus reached into his wallet, pulling out one card, swiping it with a flourish, his movements theatrical, a last attempt at preserving his dominance. The machine beeped. Beep, beep, beep. Declined. His eyes darted around, looking for support, for a lifeline, but Julian's calm, unreadable expression gave nothing away. Chloe's eyes widened, the dawning horror on her face almost tangible. Alfie and Rachel leaned back slightly, mouths opening in stunned disbelief, sensing the shift in power, unsure whether to intervene or just watch the spectacle. Marcus's panic began to grow visibly, the smooth arrogance replaced by twitching hands and shallow breaths. No, no. This can't be right, he muttered, swiping another card, a flashy gold startup card that had been more show than substance. The machine beeped again, declined. His face paled, the fake tan suddenly looking unnatural against the ashen tones creeping across his features. He looked to Chloe, desperation flashing in his eyes. But she couldn't meet it. She was frozen, trying to reconcile the man she thought she knew with the one unraveling before her. Julian, still composed, leaned in slightly, voice steady but sharp. Marcus, perhaps you should double-check the source of your funds. I'd hate to see a discrepancy cause a scene. Every word was surgical, precise, cutting away at the flimsy armor of confidence Marcus had built over the past hour. He attempted to maintain his facade, but his hands trembled, his voice cracked, and the room collectively held its breath. Marcus's last-ditch effort was a basic debit card, swiped with almost frantic speed, but even that failed. Declined. He stood abruptly, chair screeching against the polished floor, trying to recapture control, trying to salvage even a shred of authority. This system is broken. This is a scam. You're trying to rob me, he yelled, words bouncing off the walls of the luxurious private room, only to fall flat against the reality of the undeniable numbers. I watched the entire scene unfold from my vantage point in the lounge, calm as ever, savoring the precision of the moment, every panic-stricken gesture, every failed attempt to regain control, every flicker of desperation across his face was a testament to the plan executed flawlessly. I didn't need to intervene. I didn't need to raise my voice. The numbers did the talking. The ledger spoke for me, exposing every lie, every misrepresentation, every inflated claim Marcus had made about his status, his company, his wealth. Chloe's reaction was the most poignant. She had been caught between awe and loyalty. But now her confusion, fear, and betrayal crystallized. Her hands shook slightly, tears welling in her eyes as she finally began to see the man for what he was: a showman, a fraud, a predator who had miscalculated everything. Alfie and Rachel gawked, their social calculations thrown into chaos, unsure how to process the spectacle. Julian, as always, remained composed, a silent anchor, his presence amplifying the contrast between competence and collapse. Marcus, now fully aware that his cards, his wealth, and his persona were failing him in real time, tried to shout over the murmuring guests, "I'll pay all," but the words fell apart as he realized there was no escape, no dramatic flourish that could correct the situation. The decline messages were definitive, public, and humiliating. Each failed attempt chipped away at the facade. Each panic-stricken glance revealed the depth of his miscalculation. The room had shifted irreversibly. The laughter, the boastful gestures, the artificial charm, everything was gone. He was exposed, and I could see the exact moment he understood it. That smug confidence, the air of invincibility he had carried in, evaporated into a mixture of rage, confusion, and fear. He had played the role of alpha in a room that had quietly shifted beneath him. His authority was gone, replaced by the undeniable power of meticulous preparation and quiet observation. I leaned back, still calm, letting the tension stretch, letting the room feel the weight of his unraveling. Each detail mattered: the fork poised mid-air by a nervous guest, Chloe's trembling hands, Julian's steady gaze, the subtle, collective intake of breath from those who had been watching the drama unfold. Every single element reinforced the inevitability of the outcome. The perfect poetic justice of Marcus being undone by his own hubris and my silent orchestration. Finally, defeated, Marcus threw down his cards, his last desperate act of defiance, and stormed out of the private room. The heavy oak doors closed behind him with a finality that echoed across the luxurious space. Silence settled like a weight over the room. Chloe collapsed into sobs. Alfie and Rachel gaped, unsure what to do next, and Julian quietly nodded, acknowledging the conclusion without a word. From my vantage point in the lounge, I allowed myself a small, quiet smile. I had orchestrated the perfect exposure: patience, precision, and quiet dominance. Marcus had dug his own hole, and the numbers, the undeniable truth of the ledger, had done what words could not. I sat back, taking a slow sip of my cognac, letting the calm satisfaction of the moment wash over me. The power had shifted completely, and I had executed it flawlessly, with no fuss, no theatrics, only the quiet, unassailable truth. The night, my celebration, and the room itself had become the stage for his downfall, and I had watched it all unfold from the perfect vantage point. Marcus had fled, storming out of the restaurant like a man whose entire world had just collapsed. The heavy oak doors closed behind him with a finality that seemed to echo through the otherwise silent space. Chloe was left in the aftermath, her shoulders shaking, tears streaking down her face, trying to process the betrayal and the complete unraveling of someone she had trusted and admired. Alfie and Rachel hovered awkwardly nearby, unsure of where to stand or what to say, their earlier fascination with Marcus replaced by confusion and quiet shock. Julian, ever the steady presence, offered a reassuring nod and a gentle hand on Chloe's back, silently signaling that the situation was under control. I moved toward her, my steps quiet but deliberate, taking the seat beside her. There was no need for dramatic words, no need to recount the downfall or elaborate on the trap. It had already been played out perfectly in front of her eyes. Instead, I simply handed her a clean silk handkerchief and let her sob into it, providing a calm, steady presence that contrasted with the chaos Marcus had left behind. The storm had passed, and in its wake, there was a quiet space for understanding, comfort, and reflection. I didn't need to explain how meticulously the night had been orchestrated, how every action had been planned to protect her and expose Marcus. The results spoke for themselves. Chloe leaned against me, the weight of the experience pressing down, but slowly, she began to regain her composure. I didn't rush her. I let the silence do some of the work. We sat together quietly for a few moments, listening to the soft hum of the restaurant returning to normal, the distant clink of glasses, the gentle notes of the pianist resuming. This was the calm after the storm, the moment where the tension dissipated and the reality of what had just occurred could begin to sink in. It wasn't about humiliation, it was about liberation. Marcus had been unmasked, his arrogance and deception laid bare, and Chloe had been protected without even realizing the extent of the intervention. Eventually, we stood, allowing Julian to handle Alfie and Rachel, who were still caught in a daze. The ride home in the taxi was quiet at first, Chloe crying softly for the first 10 minutes, the raw, painful kind of cry that lets all the fear, embarrassment, and relief escape at once. I didn't say much. I just sat beside her, a steady, reassuring presence, letting her release what had built up over the past hour. There was no judgment, only support, the unspoken understanding that she was safe and that everything that could have gone wrong had been managed perfectly. Back at my apartment, the mood shifted from tense recovery to gentle reconnection. I made her tea, and we sat together on the sofa, Chloe curled up, looking small and vulnerable in a way that reminded me of when our parents passed and I had taken on the responsibility of raising her. We didn't rush into conversation, allowing her a moment to feel grounded and protected. Eventually, the words came. She whispered, raw and uncertain, "You knew." I nodded gently. I suspected. I corrected. Voice calm and kind. He confirmed it. He made the mistakes himself. She looked up at me, face crumpled with a mixture of frustration and relief. "You made me look like a fool. You humiliated me." I shook my head, firm but gentle. "No, Chloe, he did that. He lied. He used you. I stopped him from finishing the job. That's not humiliation. That's liberation." Her eyes searched mine, and slowly a small, tentative smile began to form. The tension began to ease. The weeks following were challenging, but she started returning to our routines, our shared dinners, our quiet conversations. We talked openly, for the first time really talking, about fears, insecurities, and the responsibilities we had carried for each other over the years. One evening, a month after the dinner, we were in my study, eating takeout pizza, Chloe helping me organize files. She had even begun auditing alongside me, a playful echo of the events that had brought clarity and justice to that night. She looked at me, matching my small smile. "He was an idiot, wasn't he?" she said. I laughed softly. "A complete and total idiot." She raised her slice of pizza, teasing. "Good thing you're not a freeloader." I clinked my slice against hers. "Never," I said. And in that simple, quiet moment, with pizza boxes and paperwork around us, the world felt right again. The case was closed, the books balanced, and for the first time, I knew my sister was truly safe. And our bond, strengthened through trials and triumph, was unbreakable. In the end, the night was a perfect mix of strategy, patience, and quiet satisfaction. Marcus got exactly what he deserved, and my sister and I reconnected in a way that felt deeper than ever. It wasn't about revenge, it was about protection, truth, and a little bit of poetic justice. And as we laughed over pizza afterward, I realized sometimes the best victories are the quiet, clever ones. If you enjoyed this story, stick around for more. There's always another twist waiting.